Hello there, my friends. I'm back, and I took a break to get some better equipment, a new microphone, and I've done some changes to my studio, my workspace. So I might be able to even use a blurred background rather than the virtual background. We'll see. But I wanted to introduce you tonight. It's night for me. You can see the dim light, which is cool. But anyway, I want to introduce you to a video which is an especially remarkable instance of the genre of what it is, which is an interview with three people, or maybe four, arguably, by one person. And who are the three people? Well, one is Beverly Rhodes, and it's her show. Now, you may say it's unusual if it's her show that she would not be the interviewer. She takes the interviewer role briefly a couple of times, but she has a gentleman named Ron who apparently works for her, and she's delegated the Master of Ceremonies role to Ron, and it's pretty cool because I can, I can understand why she did that, and it's not anything negative about her. She's an older lady, and she's sort of coming in and saying, I'm the person promoting awakening by hosting this show, and I'm going to let my friend Ron, who's a really good interviewer, do the interviewing. So Beverly, I don't know much about her, but she's a contactee, and she's friends with Elena and Dani, who get interviewed by Ron, and also JP, who is he's now a former member of the U.S. Army, retired, and he was introduced to the world, or introduced himself, when he was still in the Army, and he was with the secret space program, um, which I think was the part of it that is run by the U.S. Navy, even though he was also employed by the Army. So he had some kind of cross, what do you call them? Branches of the service, right? The military service. So there was some crossover there, which might be a little unusual. I don't know. I'm not privy to such things. I don't have a military background. But anyway, this interview, yeah, was also supposed to include Tony Rodrigues, but he did not show up. For they weren't expecting him until late in the interview, and somebody mentioned, I think, that he was trying to get in, but apparently he has some difficulty. So the interview was mainly with Elena and Dani, and then later on with JP. And Ron asked each of them to introduce himself or herself, as the case might be. And so there's quite a bit of material there where you get to know Elena, you get to know Dani, you get to know JP a little bit. And so for those of you that aren't really familiar with their stories, or who they are and what they're doing, um, this is a good video to watch to gain that knowledge. No, I'm sorry. I'm a little too tired to be doing this, but bear with me. I'll make the best of it. The main subject of this is supposed to be the UFO drones. UFO drones. Well, let's be honest. Unidentified. The U in UFO and And UAP is a bit of a misnomer, and it's a deliberate obfuscation. Government knows what they are. Drones. Well, that's an even bigger obfuscation. They may be drones in the sense of being unmanned or unpersoned, right? Unpiloted, at least by an occupant. Let's say unoccupied. They are unoccupied vehicles being directed from somewhere else. So that may be true, but nevertheless, many of them are UFOs, evidently. Well, there's really not much said about the drones in this interview. They try to go down that subject rabbit hole, to a degree, or just even to talk about it. But when they go there, it seems that they are summarily shut down. They're all kicked off the live stream and have to reconnect. And Ron says he's never seen that happen before. Well, okay, so they don't talk much about the drones, but they talk about a lot of other things that are very interesting, very stimulating to the mind and touching to the heart, very beautiful. And it's just, there's so many parts of this that, to me anyway, were very moving and very meaningful and consciousness expanding in many ways. Now, I think this video functions like a certain video that was on YouTube many years ago when it was less censored, more free speech oriented. And the title of that video was something like "Become a blankety blank," which was a type of heretic. We'll become a blankety blank in 14 minutes. So the idea was that the content creator was presenting rapid fire in a short period of time, compelling evidence that the mainstream narrative about the subject matter was false. And the possibility existed, therefore, of an open-minded person coming to that video, being confronted with the evidence and having a conversion mentally to a different way of thinking, or at least having that process started. The person might say, well, that's all very interesting, but I need more verification. And then they might go off and study for 20 hours or 20 days or 20 weeks, whatever it would take to convince them. But it would be the beginning of a process by which somebody would come to a profound change of viewpoint. Well, I think this video, although it's longer than 14 minutes, can certainly function that way. A person can approach it with the idea in mind that these are kooky people and I don't believe their stories. They're all nonsense. But I'm just going to entertain myself by listening to this. I knew somebody who used to entertain himself by listening to Coast to Coast AM until he went to sleep. And he didn't really care about the stories that were being told and whether they were true or not. I listened to them and I cared. I didn't believe all of them, but there were certainly some of them that stuck with me for a long time and that I still remember. So, anyway, in this case, the interview talks about evidence. Evidence. Well, there are extraordinary claims being aired. Where's the extraordinary evidence? It's mentioned here. It's not like a scientific paper where, the evidence is presented with a tremendous amount of rigor, but it doesn't have to be. At least not in my opinion. So you have evidence. You have evidence that ETs exist. Why? Elena says, I have had physical contact with them since I was a child. Ongoing physical contact. I've been off planet. She's been on other planets. She's been on the moon, on Ganymede, the moon of Jupiter, and other places. And she's been on board ships of different civilizations, the Anunnaki and the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and I believe also, yeah, no, I won't say I believe. I remember also an intergalactic Confederation craft. And one time she was on a gray ship, but that was not a pleasant experience. So, uh, and there's material also about who she is, who her contact Thorhan Eridion is. And Dani's there. Dani has physically met Thorhan Eridion. So they talk about and show a video about 3 minutes of video, or there's actually two instances of 3 minute videos of flyover by Galactic Federation of Worlds scout ships. It occurred September 27th in Westminster, Colorado, and was witnessed by 1,000 people. And this was arranged in advance by Elena with her contact Thorhan. And the video is obviously authentic. And the people were going crazy. They were cheering, having a great time. So those are some examples. Excuse me, I'm aware of many others, but those are pretty compelling, and it would at least start somebody looking for, well, what other evidence is there that Elena's telling the truth? There's a lot. There's a lot. So the main thing, other than that I would like to bring to your attention about the video, and of course, I'm going to post a link to it in the description. If you haven't seen that already, go looking for it when you get ready to watch the video. But let's see, Ron, the interviewer, starts out with a favorable inclination towards his guests and very open-minded. And, excuse me, he's evidently deeply impressed by their stories. But by the end of the interview, I would say by the time we get to about an hour and 40 minutes into it, he's sort of overtaken with enthusiasm. And he tells the three guests, can you come back tomorrow? I have some more questions for you. I have more things I want to talk to you about, and we'll record it. And he talks about joining their community. In other words, wherever you guys go, and I want to meet you in person. I want to go to your conferences and things like that. So here's the thing about Ron. If you watch the way he reacts and the way his attitude and perception evolve about the reality of ETs, but benevolent ETs, it sort of reflects my own, except in his is very condensed. It's condensed into this 2 hour period. And mine was more like 2 weeks or a month, right? And it's ongoing. I mean, this interview really got me going, got me charged up, and it affects the mind and the heart, the energy system, one's attitude, one's consciousness. It's not a simple thing. It's a multidimensional thing. It's very strongly affecting. I almost was in tears several times during the interview. It's amazing stuff. Very, very well. I can feel a lot of empathy for, well, Elena in particular, but also Dani and JP. And I felt a lot of empathy for Ron as well, right? I understood what he was going through. So this material should not be approached with a coldly intellectual, per, well, position, attitude, approach. No, it needs to be approached holistically, in my opinion. Of course, when you do that, you're opening yourself up to be convinced by it and to become an enthusiast. It's okay. We need to become enthusiasts. For a long time, we were um, not in a happy position as far as contact with ET was concerned, because contact with ET, well, the ETs that were available to be contacted tended to be grays and reptilians who were not pleasant people. Now, the Gnostics called them archons, and that's a pretty accurate portrayal, and said they were endemic to the solar system. That's not true. They're from farther afield, and they have interstellar empires. They wanted to add Earth to it, or yeah, to their combined empire, I guess you'd call it. And these are abusive creatures. These are not loving, empathic creatures of high vibration, so to speak, or high frequency. No, they're enslavers and they're bent on genocide. They're destroyers and ruiners of planets. Now the reptilians, who were called Sikaar, Ciakahrr, interesting spelling, or Dracos from Alpha Draconis. Um, and there's a reason, okay, that it's the Draco constellation. These people look like dragons. They're big lizards, basically, with big heads and big brains and big teeth. Not pleasant looking at all, and they have a bad attitude, and they have no empathy for other species. And well, Peter Maxwell Slattery, in a separate, distinct interview, said, "Yeah, they're foot soldiers for more impressive beings, who are equally unpleasant." So, at any rate, it is said that now the entire galaxy is in rebellion against the Sakaar, and they seem to be in danger of being wiped out. They're good at hiding and good at running and eluding people that are trying to hunt them down. So it's not clear how the conflict will end, but it's sort of like they brutalized so many people for so long that when the tide finally turned against them, everyone wants vengeance. Okay, so they wanted to take over our beautiful planet and make us all their slaves. The Greys had a similar agenda. Now, keep in mind these two groups are working together. So the Greys first wanted to kill off all the real humans and replace us with gray human hybrids that could be integrated into the gray hive mind. And not all grays have hive mentalities, but this particular group did, the Nebu, which means dominion, by the way. So yeah, well, anyway, there's a long story about that, but I don't want to overload anybody's psyche, so I'm not going to tell it. You can find it elsewhere. But yeah, Elena drops a lot of intel. Dani helps, and Dani is very adamant about um, the reality of it all. Elena is not quite so in your face about it. She has a more gentle personality, I guess, than Dani's. I like Dani very much, but she's a bit intense, okay? And she's more or less saying, "Look, people, this is real. We proved it's real. Deal with it." Right? Especially the deep state, you know. She says they would like to kill us all and they want to shut us up. They don't want us talking about what we know. And after the incident where they were kicked off the live stream and they came back, she was talking directly to whoever it is working for the deep state or the CIA that's monitoring this conversation and decided we couldn't speak freely and gives them what for. So it's very you'll see, very charming and delightful, and I recommend watching it. Okay. But the point I was making about Ron is he mirrors me to an extent. And so that's to give you insight into my process and my thoughts and feelings. Just watch Ron, listen to Ron, and realize he's going through a condensed version of what I went through. And I could liken it to the caterpillar happily munching leaves. And then one day, the time comes, the biological process kicks in, and he creates a pupa and wraps himself in it. And then he's liquefied, and he becomes this sludge or slurry of biological material, and it reforms into a butterfly, and the butterfly comes out and does what butterflies do, and it's a different kind of thing, right? So I think Ron's consciousness and thought process went through a similar transformation, all in about 2 hours. Mine took a little longer, but Ron's a little more expressive than I am. So when you watch how he reacted, well, I reacted the same way, just more privately, more quietly. Yeah. So there's more that I could say, obviously, but I want to keep it to that and just recommend that if you have any interest at all, and I guess you do, if you've watched me talk about this thus far, well, go watch the video, go watch the interview. You can do it in little installments. If the people talk too slowly for you, speed it up to 1.25 speed. Anyway, I hope you'll take it in and I hope you will enjoy it and I hope you will learn a lot from it. Now, I have quoted a recent statement by Thor Han, delivered through Elena, as his statements are, that by 2027, earthly society will look very different. Peter Maxwell Slattery said, look for 2026 to be a year in which you will begin to see a glimpse of the new earth, and it will be in full development and full blossoming by 2030. And Pete said something about some people getting on board with that and developing along with it and others not. Well, that sounds like he's talking about two different timelines, and Elena has said, no, there's only one timeline. It could be a bad one or a good one or somewhere in between, but there's only one. So it sounds almost like she and Pete disagree, but they have different, they're like any other two humans. They have different perspectives and different impressions, I guess. You know, we all have our limitations as humans, and they're talking with different groups of extraterrestrials and just having expressing things in a different way because I know there are people on this planet right now, some of whom are headed in one direction and some of whom are headed in a different direction. And there's probably more than two directions, but we'll just leave it very simple, right? I know of someone who is very resistant to evolving along with human society and the earth. There are some people that are basically Luddites and they want to go backward and they think that the good old days were better somehow. Well, if we could just have the good old days, but without the Greys and reptilians or without the Archons, it's not going to be that way. So if that's what you want, maybe you can have that. Maybe you can go live with the Amish and people of that mindset can have their way of life. They're welcome to it. Or the Hutterites or the Mennonites. And they might even lose their religion, but still want that kind of life. And I don't have a problem with that. But while people are living that kind of life, they're going to be very aware of what's going on in the rest of the world, whether it's technological advancement and or spiritual advancement. And Elena has talked about that and said that things usually work out the best when the two go hand in hand. Pete Slattery thinks that we should skip the technology part and learn to um, use the power of our minds and hearts to the full. But I don't know that that's necessarily possible or if it's appropriate for humanity. We love technology, don't we? And some of us love spirituality. Some of us love technology, some love spirituality, some love both, and some love neither, okay? And some of the ones that love neither are not necessarily bad people. So diversity will be our strength if it doesn't set us at odds with one another, uh, and if we can tolerate one another and tolerate differences, and say, you people want to be yeoman farmers, well, go for it. The rest of us are going to use food replicators or partake of a little of both, right? And then there will be some of us who will say, we don't need to eat, we'll just sun gaze, and that'll give us all the energy we need. And maybe they're right. Maybe they'll succeed in that. Will everybody eat the same diet? Some will say eating meat produces bad karma. Some will say, yeah, but eating fruit will not nourish your body adequately. So we'll still have those kinds of differences of opinion and conflicts and things. But hopefully there won't be wars over whether to eat meat or fruit and that sort of thing. So I have a bad tendency, my friends, to ramble. I will not ramble any further. I will mercifully let you go. And thank you for visiting and listening to my verbal essay, partly pre-planned and partly improvised. I knew basically what I wanted to say, and I've embellished it a little bit here and there and gone down a few paths that I didn't originally intend. How do you like my new setup? It's beautiful, isn't it? You don't see all that weird background stuff. I'm using Zoom, which actually has a little bit better picture than Meetin. I could also use Meetin, and we'll see. Maybe I will in the future. Switch back and forth between Zoom and Meetin. That would work. All right. I'm going to go now and get some sleep, and I'll probably make some more videos this weekend. I want to talk about some specific reasons why I believe that Elena is telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as far as she knows it. And that, I might also talk about why I believe that the Galactic Federation of Worlds is an authentic organization and they're authentic people. Now, Elena talked about that in this interview, if you want to listen to her exposition on that point. Excuse me. So I'm going to say hasta la vista and turn off the recording, and I'll talk to you later. But first, if you haven't liked the video, please do it. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. And hit the bell so that you'll be notified of my uploads. And this channel is not all about ETs. Maybe it has been so far, maybe it will be a little bit longer. But there are various and sundry things that I want to, expose here that are all sort of related to our evolution, our consciousness evolution, our evolution as, let's say, no, well, what's the source of morality, right? Source of morality and ethics. It's either aligning ourselves with source, and I feel the universe is honest, the universe is benevolent, fundamentally, and the universe is loving, or you could say source or God or whatever word you want to use for it, right? I think source is used a lot by our ET cousins and brothers and sisters, if you want to call them that. So everything is connected. Complete unity, full unity consciousness probably doesn't exist below the level of source, but we can get closer and closer and closer to it. And meanwhile, duality happens, and dualistic reality is what we confront. In the outer world, at least. All right, friends, I'm clicking the end record button and releasing you. Bye for now.